It's the week before Holy Week, and I think I'm about as non-religious right now as maybe I've ever been as a pastor, which is a strange location to sit in for a bit. I'm uncomfortable getting ready for Holy Week because echoing in the back of my mind are the words of the prophets when they proclaimed what God had spoken through them and said, I despise your festivals. I don't want all of your forms of worship because you don't work for the weightier matters of justice. And I wonder, a big part of me wonders, that worries maybe that if I spend a whole bunch of time preparing all the Holy Week observances and inviting people to them, that I'm distracting all of us from those weightier matters. And I know things are weighty right now. I had supper last night with a group of trans activists, and I know how much pain there is in that community. Families in our own congregation who have trans children have had to testify in front of our state legislature, just begging them to stop targeting trans people. And that's just like one example of the kinds of struggles that we're currently going through in our region and state. It's so rough that people are actually leaving and moving away. People close to me, members of our own congregation. And so I wonder, is there any value in getting everything together for Holy Week when what I feel like I ought to be doing is whatever it would take to reverse course on all of the evil and awful things that are happening. But I also feel like I kind of just have to trust, and I do trust, that the reason we're a community that resists and will continue to resist these awful power moves in our state and in our world is because we follow Christ. And we've learned from Christ that resistance is essential and that you won't always win just because you speak the truth. And in fact, the story that we tell each Holy Week is, in a sense, Christ's failure to win that political battle. Although he was briefly acclaimed as he entered Jerusalem with all of the palms and the coats, by the time the next Friday rolled around, he was on a cross and was crucified for, at least in part, being anti-fascist, somebody that was against Caesar and the religious powers and was perceived as a threat by them. But he had his allegiance to something bigger. One was faithfulness to God, his Father, and then also his faithfulness to just the full humanity of people. And the way he centered that. And that's what we've learned as a Christian community from Christ. And so there's still a lot of value in giving the time, taking the time to observe Holy Week, because it helps us remember that. There's a lot of ways to do Holy Week, and maybe some kinds of ways of doing Holy Week would be distracting or performative or that kind of thing. But I honestly think that observing Holy Week next week, as hard as it will be, and as difficult as it is me to put any energy into it because I feel like there's so much to distract us, there's value in remembering that he was acclaimed on Sunday at Palm Sunday, and by Maundy, Thursday, he was telling the disciples at an upper room meal that he would be betrayed, and he washes their feet, and then he's arrested and betrayed, and the next day crucified. And we will gather as the people who follow that Christ to enact that. In fact, I wonder if maybe the whole thing about Holy Week that we might learn from, that we might respond to, is perhaps we need more radical liturgies in our world. Maybe we need more telling this kind of story and then placing it in those spaces where it can really tell the story again of who Christ really was in relationship to everything we're struggling with. I'm not sure about that. What I do know right now is it's really hard for me to want to invite everybody to this because I'm as distracted as you are. And yet here comes this week of Holy Week, and I would love to have us together observe Palm Sunday and rehearse the Passion story and gather for remembering Christ's meal in the upper room on Maundy, Thursday, and gather around the cross on Friday and light candles in remembrance of Christ and all those who have died in faith. And then at the Easter Vigil, light that new fire and trust in the hope of resurrection that applies in this life now and not just some future life after we die. So this is just that invitation. I know it's not easy. I know it's really, really hard. And yet there's something about gathering together and not just telling the story verbally, but actually practicing it through our time and the shape of our life. And so I invite you to come for that if it means something to you too. All of us recognizing together how hard it is right now.